morning. I swear a lot.
It is 3:22 in the PM, and you're watching or listening to The Foreman. I'm your host, Foreman, and once again, it's been a while since we've done a Foreman Talks, but I don't like to push these out for the sake of it. I only like to do them when I actually have something that I at least consider is worth talking about, or indeed something I feel like I can talk about at length. Even though we've got the therapy campaign nowadays, but that's mostly for short-term things where I'm like, hey, I don't know, exercising now, or oh no, I'm 30 and I'm old. Like, it's for more short-term topics. This is for something not necessarily more deep or more personal or anything like that, but just stuff that can be explored a bit more in depth. But I've got one for you today. A friend of mine reached out and was like, yo, I just got Helldivers. Been talking a lot about Helldivers recently, but you know what? It's somewhat relevant. We got Helldivers recently, and I'm playing with a bunch of people on a different server. Do you want to come and play as well? Because I've noticed you play the game, you've been playing a lot. And I was like, yeah, of course, obviously. I love to play Helldivers. Well, I'm level 50 on there now. I'm pretty sure I haven't put a video up since, like, I don't know, a month ago or so. But I'm like level 50. I've got all the stratagems, practically all the armor, and I've almost completed the war bonds. Like, I've got basically everything. I've been playing for a long time. Beaten missions on Helldiver. I've actually got all the achievements, 100% of the achievements as well. I still enjoy playing it because it's fun, but the point is I've done everything, alright? I've basically done everything up to this time of recording. I'm sure more stuff will be added soon. I went to join them. Obviously my friend was level 1 because he was literally doing the tutorial as we were talking, and then as I arrived, he just finished the tutorial. And the two friends he had there were averaging around level 10. I don't remember the exact numbers, but like, you know, between 10 and 15. And my first thought was, oh god, I hope these people don't think I'm actually good, because I'm like average at Helldivers. I'm alright. I'm okay at it. I get along okay. I can fight as part of a team. I can solo pretty well, but I'm far from the best player one has ever seen. But the point is, you know, we got level 1 and 2 people between level 10 and level 15. These are people relatively new to the game, right? By level 10 to 15, you've picked up quite a lot of things, like, you know, don't get me wrong, these people I played with were definitely competent, they knew stuff about the game. They were definitely not bad, I was not carrying them, like, let's be clear, we were playing challenging missions, I can solo those, so I wasn't, like, going in there try-harding it or anything, because I didn't need to for a start, and also it's not really how I play. But I wasn't carrying them. They were doing perfectly fine on their own. They would have beaten those missions if I weren't there, I think is the most key point to add. The 3 of them could have beaten those missions, but played with the 3 of them, and it was fun, and I enjoyed it a lot, but it was an experience that introduced me to something that, it's something I've always felt, but I've never really seen firsthand outside of me being the subject of it, as to why this is a good thing, right? But I saw these guys playing, and they were talking, and they were strategizing. Like, obviously, as the veteran player, maybe I should have gone in and been like, alright, I'm gonna sort of tell you guys what to do and kind of strategize and quote-unquote be team leader. It's a thing I hate in games where sometimes people naturally assume the role of like a team leader when you're playing in groups, and that's fine. It's people who actually show some like proper competence for directing the team and telling people what to do and reacting to situations, and they aren't bossy, they've just got a mind for it. Like, my friend Oku is a great team leader. You know, when we play together, he kind of keeps us all on task and stuff. I think he's very good at it, and he never went for that, he never tried to be that, he just turned out to be that. It occurred to him naturally, and I think that's great, and he should keep doing it, because he does a good job of it, despite the fact he keeps hitting us with 380 bombardments, I swear to god, and he keeps shooting me if I annoy him, and then I shoot him back, and then we get into a long chain of shooting each other, and our reinforcement count just starts to drop down very quickly. But hey, no one's perfect, and that's like 50% my fault as well, so, you know. But off topic. Point is, going into this, I probably should have been that person to like start directing people and tell them what to do, but A, that's not really how I play. B, I'm not really a natural leader in these kinds of things. I can do it, and I think I do an alright job at it, but I don't naturally do it. I usually wait to see if someone else wants to do it. And third of all, this was a different server, bunch of people I met before, I only knew one person in the team. I wasn't inclined to get in there and start bossing people around, you know? Like, I am a guest. I have been very graciously invited here. I'm just gonna play the video game, right? So one of them had kind of naturally assumed the role of team leader, and he did a great job, honestly. Yeah, I was just directing everyone. I did what he said. I would occasionally provide clarifying information. I was like, yeah, this can do this, or this can do that. But I wouldn't be like, no, that tactic sucks, we should do this, or no, that's not a good idea. I just let him get on with it, and I played along, and I did whatever. He wanted someone to go clear out a base on the other side of the map by themselves, and I was like, yeah, I'll do that, because I solo all the fucking time, so I'm suited for it. But the point, I'm just talking about it in general, because it was actually a very fun experience, and I enjoyed it all very much, and it was just a nice time, I guess. But the reason I'm bringing all this up is because as I was playing with them, they would say stuff, they would come up with strategies and tactics and reasonings for doing certain things and weapon combinations and stuff. And in my head, I'd be like, well, that combination is fine, or, and I should point out this was in my head, I didn't say this stuff out loud. I'd be like, that combination is fine, that combination's alright, I guess, that weapon kinda sucks, there's not really any needs to do this thing that we're currently doing, like, this is not gonna be much of a big deal. They're like, oh, take out this base or we're gonna get overwhelmed, and I'm like, it won't really do that much, especially when we get a certain distance away. This was all in my head. I could have said this out loud, I could have set them straight, made sure they knew what was going on with the game and all that jazz. Like, there were many points in which I could have provided information and technically made them better at the game. But I realized very, very quickly that that wasn't a good idea. Not just because I was a guest in their server, although of course that is a big factor, but because I realized that allowing people to explore a game, the early stages of exploring a game, are so crucial to your overall enjoyment of it. Because I used to be exactly where they were, where you've got a weapon or you've got a stratagem and you're like, what does this affect? What does this work against? What does this not work against? Like, what will happen if I do this? And like, you're going for a mission, you're like, we've got to wipe out all the bases, or they're just going to keep sending forces at us, or, oh, there's a patrol, we should kill them quick, without realizing that sometimes you should avoid patrols, for example. Or just a million things, which is like, when you've been playing the game for long enough, it's like, okay, yes, now I know all of these things, I know the right and wrong things to do, I know what is more, and I hate this term, but it is applicable, I know what's optimal, I know what should be done here, I know what's the best way to do it. I don't actually know everything that's optimal, but I know more optimal things than I did when I was level 10, right? I know the things to do in these circumstances. That's fine when you're level 50, right? That's maybe the mindset you should start moving towards. But when you're level 10 or level 1, like, that's a crucial time to just explore the game, to be filled with wonder, to be like, what can these enemies even do? How smart are they? What are their capabilities? Like, what should I expect? Holy shit, what's that? It's killed me. It was a charger and it's killed me. Wow, there are giant bugs. Oh my god, that's an even bigger one. It's a bile titan. Fucking hell, it's spewing acid at me and I'm dead. Oh my god, I didn't know the automatons literally had tanks. Like, these are moments. I could have gone in there and been like, okay, on this mission you want to bring this, and this, because they might bring hulks and tanks and they might have turrets and stuff, but you don't want to be told that before you've gotten in there, and you don't even necessarily want to be told that 10 levels in. You just want to figure it out. Plus, I've always been a bit hesitant about providing too much information and too much advice and tactics and facts during games, because I'm like, most people probably know this shit anyway. I'll only provide it if they display in some form that they don't actually know, and I'm like, well, it kind of actually works like this. I try to be very mild with it, barring certain circumstances, and that's when people try to correct me when I know they're wrong, and I'm like, motherfucker, actually it works this way, and you are objectively wrong. But that's a whole different kettle of fish and not related to that experience. But this all this Helldiver talk, playing with these guys, having a great time, letting them just kind of experience the game and being along for the ride, which was very fun, I enjoyed doing it, reinforced to me the importance of the early stages of a game where you don't know what the fuck's going on, where you don't know what capability the game has, as it were. What are the limits? You don't know what the limits are, you've just started playing. When you've been playing a game long enough, you begin to understand the limits that the world, that the gameplay mechanics, the engine, the opponents have. You understand what can happen and what can't happen, right? If you're playing Assassin's Creed, no, you cannot fly 500 feet into the air and assassinate someone like a peregrine hawk. Perhaps you can through like leaps of faith or stuff, I don't know, but you can't literally just Superman off the ground, right? But you don't necessarily, that's an extreme example, but you don't necessarily know these things when you start playing, and you don't necessarily want someone to come up to you and say, you can do this, you can't do that, that's not a thing you can do. Stop it, like, there's a difficult balance to achieve there, because if I went into, say, Outward and was like, I believe that if I punch these rocks, I will get a fucking gem out of it. I don't mean mining veins, I mean literally punching rocks, I'll get a diamond out of it. That might be the time for someone to come along and say, no, Foreman, that's not how that works. That's just not a thing. Because that's just plain ridiculousness. The Superman example I just gave would actually be a great one. If someone went into a game thinking that, you should probably be like, no, that's not a thing, because that's ridiculous. But if someone's like, I don't know, oh man, I wonder if the bugs, like, will run away and try and alert other bugs, you know, to your presence, like in Helldivers, for instance. I'm pretty sure that's not a thing. I'm 90% certain that's not a thing. That's the joy of Helldivers, actually, is that I don't know 100% for certain that. I know they cry for help, but they don't tend to run off to get reinforcements. But at level 1, you don't necessarily need to tell someone at level 1 that is definitely a thing the bugs can't do, right? Because if you're fighting the bugs, you're gonna want to shoot them all anyway, because they can call for help, because any bug can kill you very quickly. So there's no gameplay consequence to not telling them that the bugs cannot run off to get help. You know what I mean? And not telling them that maintains that level of wonder, of mysteriousness, of, like, questioning how intelligent are the opponents in this game? What can they do? That experience is crucial to so many games. I've been playing Baldur's Gate, well, I was, like, we've kind of taken a break from it because busy lives, but I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3 with Lemon. Lemon has asked many questions, and I know these kinds of questions because I ask them during videos as well, where I posit a question out loud as a form of conversation. I'm not actually looking for the answer, unless I specifically state, do you guys know if blank, right? I'm not necessarily looking for an answer, I'm just querying out loud. And that's why there have been so many questions that Lemon has asked me in that series, and I've answered maybe 5% of them. The rest of them, I've acted like I don't know. I've acted like I'm at the same level as him, especially in cutscenes when he's like, this person seems a little shady, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I know for a fact that this person is solid gold and will never cause us any problems. But out loud, I'm like, maybe, I don't know, like, what do you think? It seems a bit much to kind of, I might try and steer him in a certain direction, be like, oh, it might be a bit much to just kill him, maybe hear what they have to say. But I'd never tell him what's going on, unless there is a very good reason for doing so. Because I believe in that early game experience of just not quite knowing the full extent of things that can happen. And Baldur's Gate is very important for that, actually, because I'm not going to spoil anything here in case Lemon decides to watch it, bless his heart, but vague, not actually any detailed spoilers for Baldur's Gate 3. There are things that can happen in that game that turn everything on its fucking head. I'm giving no specifics, no examples. I am not telling you I'm not going to say a goddamn thing about it, but what you think the limits of Baldur's Gate are, or the story of Baldur's Gate is, by the end of, like, say, Act 1, are not the limits. The game has more in store for you, and it will do things that you will not expect. And that is the beauty of that game. I think it wasn't until Act 3, I think, that in my mind I was like, okay, I think I fully understand the limits of this game. I think I fully understand what's going on here. I thought I understood in Act 1, and I was wrong. And that was kind of the joy of it. When I was in Act 2, after that fact, I was like, I no longer take anything for granted, because I just don't know what's going to happen. Baldur's Gate 3 is an absolute beauty for doing that. It is a fantastic gameplay experience, but so many adventure games, you know, like, the whole point of these games is to explore them. The whole point of most games is to explore them. You don't want to know everything that you can do just as you start playing. What if you just started playing Sekiro, right? And the game gave you a tutorial on how to redirect lightning. You're like, motherfucker, I didn't even know I could do that. What? When? And now the game's like, oh, fucking 8 hours from now or so you'll be able to do that. And that's not a particularly bad or egregious example, but you don't want or need to know that at that point in the game. You want to wait till it's relevant, and then the game being like, hey, by the way, you know that lightning he's shooting at you? Fucking send it back. And you're like, what? Really? And the game's like, yeah. It's got to be a mutual hype moment. It's got to be that thing where the game's like, hey, guess what? Hey, guess what? You can do this. And you're like, no fucking way. And the game's like, yes fucking way. It should be fun. quite like Helldiver's loading screen tips for this, because it provides you with that kind of information just as you're about to deploy into a mission, and sometimes provides you with things that you wouldn't have thought of. And you'll look at it and go, oh really? Yeah, no, I guess that is a thing I can do. Like, you've kind of already gotten most of the way there in terms of the thought process, and the game just kind of caps it off for you and being like, by the way, give this a try. And you're like, yeah, all right, I think I will. Yeah, I think I'm gonna. It should be... I hate to pat myself on the back like this, but it's kind of the most relevant example I can think of, but my playthrough with Lemon, I think, is the way to handle it in most cases, where you're very tentatively giving them nudges, but mostly refraining from giving them solid details. Let them figure out what they're doing. Let them discover the world and find these things out. And then when they're like, oh, so does that mean, let's use a really basic example here, okay? Oh, if you put Lemon never said this, by the way. Oh, if you put grease on the floor, you can set it on fire. Then you chime in and go, yep, you can totally do that. Or, oh, if you push people off ledges, they take extra damage. And you go, yep, you can totally do that. Wait for them to get there, then cap off the discovery with an affirming statement, you know? And that way you're not spoiling it for them. You're not telling them how the game is played. You're letting them figure it out for themselves. They still got there. You're just providing them with the confirmation of the thing they've learned so that they know it's a thing. And they go, oh, wow, cool, right, I'll try that then, brilliant, wonderful. It reminds me, and I remember I told this example on a Foreman Talks years ago now, in the knowledge that the girl in question wouldn't watch it, and she did. And she was like, oh, it was fun hearing me mentioned in one of your videos, and I was like, I didn't think you'd fucking listen to it. An ex of mine, when we were dating, I introduced her to Bloodborne. Because I love Bloodborne. Bloodborne is like my favoritist game ever. It's not the favoritist game ever. I have multiple, but it is one of my favoritist games ever, and I swear to God they need to remaster it on PC, but we've all been over this, so I won't wax on about it. But I introduced her to Bloodborne because I was like, this game is dope and I love it, and, you know, I'm sharing things I love with you, basically. She started playing it, and she seemed to get along well with the game. She seemed to enjoy it, but she did this thing. And she did this in most games, and I'm not necessarily saying that this is a bad thing, okay? If people want to do this, that's fine, it's their choice, but it baffles me personally. And it's that within, like, I want to say 20 minutes of playing the game, she was extensively, like, wiki searching all of it. And I don't mean stuff relevant to where she was, I mean, like, all the weapons, all the boss, like, learning as much as she could so that she didn't have to look around and she had the best possible tactics and strategies to beat any encounter. Not because she was excited for what was coming up, not because she was like, oh, I just want to read about all the bosses. She was like, I want to be able to beat everything as soon as I meet it. And I'm like, fine, if you want to do that, that's okay, that's your right, and I'm not going to tell you not to, but surely part of the joy of most games, and especially a fucking Souls game, is to rock up on a boss and it's some giant horror, the likes of which you've never fucking seen before, and then you have to figure out how to fight it. Is that not the fun? And especially researching the weapons in Bloodborne, I can understand that one more, but also feels like more of an egregious crime, because when you discover the Kirkhammer for the first time, it's a sword that sticks into a slab of marble or rock or whatever, that when you stick the sword in the rock, it becomes a great hammer, and it is a joy to use. And that is a pretty basic example considering all the trick weapons in Bloodborne. What about the Reiterpalish, which is a rapier with a pistol built into it? I fucking love that thing, it's so cool. But all these weapons that you can discover, and you spoil it all for yourself. And I'm like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Why would you want to do that? Baffles me. I'm not giving people shit for it. If that's how you play games, fine. That is entirely your prerogative. More power to you. I'm not trying to take a swing at you here. I just personally don't get it. Or it's just not my way of doing things. If you do, good for you. But this leans into the fact that the early stages of playing Bloodborne is an absolute delight. The early stages of that video game where you are discovering Bloodborne, you are discovering Yharnam, you are discovering the capabilities that your hunter has, your ability to fight, the gameplay style of the game, the fact that those motherfuckers will tag you if you spam dodge. But it's so easy to spam dodge at the start of that game because you're scared of everything, so you spam dodge and you get tagged and you die. And then you learn to time it and get better and learn that offense is actually a really good defense, but I'm kind of waxing lyrical here. The early stages of Bloodborne are a joy, and I would not want to deprive neither myself nor anyone else of that pleasure of exploring that world and learning about it. Elden Ring is much the same way, especially since the world is so fucking big. I'd say Elden Ring probably has the greatest potential, maybe not necessarily realized, but the greatest potential of like wonder when you start playing, because without any knowledge, because you're like, what is this world capable of? What's here? What is here? What can happen? What can attack me on the overworld? Indeed, you leave the fucking tutorial area and get jumped by a tree sentinel. Like, and that further reinforces the thought of what the fuck is out here. It's a Souls game. It's an open world Souls game. Sky's the fucking limit. And the sky's not the limit, actually, as it turns out. This is the thing. There's a giant fucking tree over there. Am I gonna go on there? Maybe. I don't know. Anything could happen. That is the beauty of early game ignorance, I suppose. I guess it's the term I might coin for it, is early game ignorance, and why it's a good thing. Why it is necessary for an enjoyable gameplay experience for most people. Maybe not for everyone. Some people just prefer to know what's going on. That's fine. But as far as I can tell, for most people, even if they don't realize it, that early game ignorance is what makes a game shine. Stellaris was also like this. I started playing Stellaris recently, but early game ignorance plays a huge part in playing Stellaris, because the early game of Stellaris is exploring the galaxy to find systems you can claim and settleable planets and ruins and artifacts and the other races and random threats out in the universe, like, or the galaxy. How boring would it be if you started playing Stellaris and the tutorial was like, hey, this can happen during these events, and this can happen, and this will happen, and it just really detailed everything that could happen. Boring. I want to explore it. I want to discover it. I want to have those organic moments where I'm like, oh my god, the trees on this planet move. Like, that's fun. RimWorld's a great example as well, because you drop with a bunch of colonists on a planet that you know fuck all about. You don't know anything about this planet. All you know is you gotta try and have your colonists survive, and anything can happen. Why is there a gargantuan sloth over there? Is it friendly? I don't know. Why is the floor rumbling underneath my pantry? Oh god, giant bugs. And mods just make that even better. Discovering a new RimWorld mod is an absolute joy. God, that's fun. XCOM is like this too, as well. I wouldn't want to discover a new alien while playing XCOM 2, or any of the XCOMs, actually. This is not exclusive to XCOM 2. I wouldn't want to encounter a new enemy in XCOM and have the game be like, okay, this is a this, it does this, 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 and that, and it will do this on its turn. I'll be like, okay. I want it to fucking rock up, and I'm like, okay, we're in position and we're ready, and it vomits 10,000 tons of magma and melts the fucking stage. I want shit I'm not expecting. I want shit I couldn't possibly expect, and I don't want to be told about it beforehand, barring certain circumstances. It's a difficult balance. This does actually bring us into a different, still the same topic, but kind of a segue, which is on the one hand, blindsiding your players with interesting, fun, and exciting things. But the flip side of that coin is blindsiding your players with impossible threats they couldn't possibly do anything about, which feels bad, man. It's difficult. You have to be careful about how you do it. And the difficulty is that the meeting point between those two sides would be how much you tell the player before they actually have to deal with it. And that's tricky. That's actually very tricky. That thought has just occurred to me. And that is where a lot of games either succeed or fail on this front, because sometimes playing XCOM this is why it came to me, because I'm thinking of XCOM now. Sometimes XCOM just rocks up with a new enemy and goes, fuck you, and there's not a lot you can do about it, because you couldn't have possibly known what to do about it. Though that is kind of the point of XCOM, to be fair. Good point, actually. Good point, me. Thanks, me. Circle jerk for a while. That is the point of XCOM, though, is that you are fighting an entirely alien threat and you need to discover what its capabilities are and then use its technology against it, which, by its nature, would require you to come across enemies that you don't know how to fight. The whole point of it is to learn how to fight them. It's not the case for me anymore playing XCOM, because at least in terms of XCOM Enemy Unknown, XCOM Enemy Within, and XCOM 2, I know all the enemies and I know how to fight them. I know which enemies to target first, I know which ones are going to be a problem, I know which ones can be safely ignored, at least until later. No enemy can be safely ignored, but who can be moved further down the priority list because that sectoid is about to try and mind control someone, and even if he fails, they will panic and lose their turn, so the sectoid needs to go. And I learned this by having the early game experience of having those slimy motherfuckers mind control my troops. But those experiences fueled my overall enjoyment for the game. Those early game ignorant moments. I love early game ignorance. I think it should be encouraged. I don't think it should be... I should point out that I'm not presenting these points from the perspective of like a LPer, because to be blunt, in terms of like Limbus and stuff, people haven't been too handholdy or too like trying to get me to know everything as soon as possible. They've kind of just let me enjoy it, which I very much appreciate. But I'm talking about this not as a YouTube guy, game person, let's player, but as someone who just plays games. I truly believe people should be allowed to experience things and find out on their own the limits that a game has, both good and bad. How much can that opponent do to me? How much can I affect that opponent? How much can I affect the environment? How far does the map go? Can I cut down this tree? Maybe. I don't know. Fear and Hunger, I think, actually used this idea of early game ignorance to its advantage as a horror element, and I actually think a lot of horror games that are good make use of early game ignorance. Fear and Hunger is good because you don't know how badly those enemies are gonna fuck you up until they fuck you up, and they fuck you up. Like, first fight you're in, I've lost a limb. I've lost a fucking limb, and the game doesn't just give you limbs back. Not easily. That takes a bit of doing, unless you get insanely lucky. So Fear and Hunger is good for that, but horror game enemies are definitely good for this, because you need to be able to look at that enemy and be like, can I even take that? Will it just kill me? And that's where the horror comes from. You're like, I don't know, I got this pipe. Is he weak to pipes? Is he indifferent to pipes? I don't know. It could be. The only way I'll find out is if I hit him with it, but if I hit him with it and he's indifferent to pipes, then he's gonna wear my skin. And that's scary, which is good because it's a horror game. I don't want to use this example because it's a bit cliche to talk about horror and then talk about this game, but I suppose it is relevant. But I believe a lot of Five Nights at Freddy's success came from this, because yeah, you have the phone guy telling you what, like, things about the AI. I was nearly said abnormalities, not quite. Animatronics, telling you stuff about the animatronics. But you don't fully understand their behavior. You can't, because they are so erratic. So they do shit you don't expect, which contributes to the horror, that early game ignorance. You don't know every animatronic's personality and behavior yet, and that's why they're scary. That's why, what was it, Five Nights at Freddy's Custom Night, you know, when they released that big game which had literally every single animatronic in it, and you just did challenge runs on it, basically. That's why that wasn't scary. It wasn't intended to be scary. That was a gameplay challenge thing where it's like, okay, learn these I nearly said abnormalities again. Learn these animatronics and do challenge runs. It's, you know, it's all in the fucking 2020 mode idea behind the game. But yeah, early game ignorance lends itself extremely well to horror. It lends itself well to strategy as well, because the best way to learn good strategy is to have to try and strategize against things where you don't know what they can do. Imagine someone playing Total War Warhammer and they fight the Tomb Kings for the first time and they're like, well, it's just a bunch of fucking skeletons, and they fight them and they are just a bunch of fucking skeletons, and you're like, alright, well, these guys are a bit shit. And then they spawn a unit of fucking Ushabti behind your lines, and they just start carving up your siege artillery. That's a thing you've got to be willing to plan for, and you learn that by having a unit of Ushabti carve up your fucking artillery. You will not make that mistake again once they've done it. For sure you won't. Or you're like, oh boy, Archaon the Everchosen, I wonder what he can do. And then after he absolutely stomps your pathetic army into the ground, you learn to never fight him again. unless you try and auto-resolve it if you can. I joke, of course. Manually fighting Archaon can be quite interesting. You just need to keep him away from your fucking army, Jesus Christ. Because he can do so much damage so quickly, and he takes a while to die. But that's definitely getting off topic. I don't want to wax on Total War Warhammer for too long. Early game ignorance is important because it taps into that natural human element, which has pervaded throughout human history, which is the desire for discovery, for learning, for gaining knowledge. You see something that you find interesting and you want to learn more about it. So you go in there and experience it. You learn about it, you discover it, you figure out, and this sounds like a very scholarly thing, but it doesn't have to be. Someone interested in boxing starts boxing and they learn more about how to box. They learn what punches are good, what stances to take, how to lean in, when to duck, when to block, when to play on the attack, when to back off. It is universally a thing. I was going to use a smarter term, but my brain fucking stopped, so all I've got was a thing. It is universally a thing. It is in every single profession, experience, hobby, game, book, movie. You watch a movie because you want to know more about it. You don't want to go into a movie and then just before you sit down to watch it, someone spoils the first third of the movie for you. That's why trailers are shit. That's why I don't watch trailers on anything anymore. I don't watch trailers because they are an anathema to early game ignorance. They show you things. They give you an idea of what the limitation of the game is. I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that. I want to go in bright-eyed and innocent and completely ignorant and 100% smooth-brained and just experience the fucking thing. I'd want that with a movie as well, and I'd want that with a book. There are, exceptions to this rule. If you're gonna go fucking mountain climbing, you should probably have some knowledge going into that, right? Like, unfortunately, common sense does have to weigh in every now and then and make itself known. If you're gonna go mountain climbing, you should probably do that. If you're gonna go deep sea diving, there is knowledge you should probably have prior to doing that. If you're gonna, I don't know, do chemistry, there is definitely knowledge you should have prior to doing that, but at its core, this is a thing. You would learn as much as you can about deep sea diving so that you could go into the ocean and explore the ocean, see all that shit that you don't get to see. You would go mountain climbing so you could see the top of the mountain in person. You could look at a picture of the peak, sure, but it will never compare to actually going there. You don't want anyone to go there for you, you want to go there yourself. This has been very dramatic for what is essentially me sitting here and saying, yo, I like the early game in video games because I don't know what the fuck. But it's important to me. All games are important to me. Everything about games is important to me. But this experience at its core is extremely important to me because this is where my love of video games comes from. This is where the passion comes from. This is where the joy comes from. The feeling of discovery, seeing new things, being blindsided, being surprised. When games with real substance don't show you all their cards, they let you come in and figure out more for yourself. And I think that's really special. I'm going to leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you think, okay? Because I appreciate people approach games very differently. So I imagine there are going to be more than a few vastly differing opinions to my own, and that's totally fine. Look, I ain't going to tell you how to fucking enjoy your games, and if you post a differing opinion, I'm not going to slam down on you and be like, you're wrong, and you're stupid, and your face is ridiculous. No. Enjoy your game. It's fine. I'm just curious to hear your opinion. But that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching, or listening, I suppose. Welcome back to Foreman Talks. This won't be regular, I don't think, but I just had something I wanted to talk about. Special thanks to Lit Potatoes, Proxy, Caminera, Moa, Heartland, Harrick J, Draft, Dresso, Sion Distance, LOL, Final Legend, Etherbin, Linky, Xeon Cedar, Bimblewart, Majoko, Mymoon, Alkir, Honeydew Corporation, Sweet Baby Red, Jessicitty, Plutonium Pie, Dreamer Ghost, Leper Lullaby, K-Bub, Magical, The Frostbite, Monsoon, Warmaster Oku, SCP-106A, Namad, and Kenny T800 for supporting me on Patreon. Thank you so much, guys, and thank you all so much for watching. this was a fun one. I actually really enjoyed talking about this. I got really into it because it is something I'm genuinely passionate about, and I think it's genuinely important to a lot of video games. Not all of them. If you're playing a sports game, you probably want to know what you can do because it's a sports game. If you're playing a fighting game, you probably want to know what you can do because that's kind of at the core of that gameplay experience. There are exceptions, of course. No statement is ever actually universally applicable, despite what I said earlier, and I now found a smart word for it rather than a dumb word, so good job, me. But let me know what you think. I'd be delighted to hear your opinions. If you have any topics in mind for future Foreman Talks videos, then let me know, because it can often be a while before I think of a new one or get something that I really want to talk about. But whatever we talk about next time, hope I see you there. Doodles. Goodbye.